So good evening again, everyone. And again, thank you for joining today. So again, we will start with a short mindfulness breathing exercise to quiet our mind. Relax, let go any stiffness in your body. And let go of all the thoughts for a moment. And keep your attention to the breath as you inhale and exhale, watching it mindfully and being aware of that. Then we can try to have a good motivation for being here. We can think and contemplate. May I ask, coming here together, giving our precious time, energy, resources, may all become cause and condition to have a deeper understanding of this Nagarjuna's commentary on Bodhichitta. So we can apply in our practice whatever we learn from them as much as possible. So that we can generate and fully develop the true Bodhichitta mind. And through those true Bodhichitta mind, reducing or overcoming all the afflictive emotion and root of all the afflictive emotion. Self-grasping, ignorance, and selfish attitude, which are the main root cause of all our problem and suffering. in having engaged in a practice as much as we can. Gradually, may we be able to achieve our high potential, fully awakened state. So we can perfect and complete the highest well-beings of others and oneself. And throughout now, till we achieve fully enlightenment, may we always be helpful and beneficial to the sentient beings, directly, indirectly, in whatever way we can. At least may we never intentionally hurt and harm others. Okay.
To the founder, the endowed To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of humans to be attained, teachers of gods and human beings. To you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all three, ever devout homage. To all worthy of respect, bowing with bodies as many as all realms atoms, in all aspects. With supreme faith, I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions, subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a visual aberration, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. I prostrate to the Arya Triple Gem. Thus did I hear at one time that Bhagawan was dwelling in Massive Vulture's Mountain in Rajagriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagawan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty. Emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no order, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomena. There is no I element, and so on, up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Tayata om gate gate pada samgate bodhisoha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. Then, Michael, if you could go to the short mandala offering, please. Thank you. Sajipu ki jushik meto Ramri Rapingji Ni de ken padi Sange jindu mi te uwahi Drokun amda la cho parsho Idam Guduratna Mandalakam Niryateyami. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye Chodan Soki Chonam Chanchu Bardu Dagni Kapsuchi Dagi Chonen Gepe Sonam Gi Jola Penchir Sangye Drupar Sho Sangye Chodan Soki Chonam Chanchu Bardu Dagni Kapsuchi Dagi Chonen Gepe Sonam Gi Jola Penchir Sangye Drupar Sho.
So regarding this, Nagarjuna's commentary to Bodhichitta, we are in a chapter, where he explained the ultimate Bodhichitta, and part of that ultimate Bodhichitta, presenting the final thought of the Buddha, the ultimate thought of the Buddha, by rejecting or refuting the presentations of what self is or selflessness is, and the phenomena by some of Buddhist school of thought as well as non-Buddhist school of thought. And then we just finished on a section where he just negated and negated of permanent, single, partless, and autonomous self, and thereby presenting the self exists only on impermanent level. It does not exist on. It does not. Is not permanent, but is impermanent, ever changing. It's not single, partless, but it is a part, and it is not autonomous, but it is dependent on other factors such as the aggregates. So that kind of self, after rejecting that and presenting self to exist impermanently with the parts, and by depending on other factors as so that presentation of self, refuting such self and presenting that self is more or less, as I mentioned last week, all the Buddhist school of thought, all the 4 different Buddhist school of thought come to the same conclusions. So we were on verse number 10, and we just kind of, this world devoid of the self and so on, So again, of course, when we said this world, external environment as well as the living sentient being, especially here, living sentient being, the person, such as the self of persons, is devoid of such self, permanent and partless and autonomous self and so on, is utterly vanished by the notions of aggregate element and sense field. The self only exists by depending on aggregates and element and sense field or sense faculties. It only exists by depending on them, not autonomous, independent, but they. And when you have that understanding, then it utterly vanishes this the idea of autonomous self, and that of object and subject, So basically, saying there is no autonomous or truly existing self. Not only there is no truly existing self, even the basis of the self, which is the aggregate or element or sense faculties, they are also empty of truly existence. They are also devoid of truly existence. even the subject and objects, the subject, the mind, and the objects, which are the objects of the mind, they are also all those are empty of truly existence, truly inherent existence. So then next is cautions or doubt asked by coming by the two school of thoughts of the Buddhism, the Bhavasika and Sotantrika, those two schools. And they come, thus Buddhas who seek to help others. So they say, if there is no truly existence, self and phenomena, as Nagarjuna you says, then what about in the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, Buddha explained that there is, the aggregate elements, sense faculty, as though they exist, truly existing, inherent existing. What about that? So that was the question asked by them, because there are three turning wheel of the Dharma. Okay, three turn of the wheel of Dharma, not necessarily depending on the time, is more on depending on the subjects. Depending on what subject matter Buddha taught at different time. Then some of them are included in first turning of the wheel of Dharma, depending on the subject, and then second turning wheel of the Dharma, depending on the subject, and third turning wheel of. So in the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, not all the teaching on the first turning, but within that, there is one particular sutra in there where Buddha seems to, if you take literally, it seems to explain as though there is somehow inherent or truly existing of aggregates and elements and sense faculty, so forth. And those school of thought, they take the first turning wheel of the Dharma as literally, definitive. Whereas Nagarjuna will not take that sutra as definitive. He will take it as interpretive. You have to interpret the meaning of that. You cannot take it literally. Whereas like in second turning wheel of the Dharma, like in the Heart Sutra, where Buddha clearly there is clearly mentioned how everything starting with the form, everything are empty of inherent existence. Inherent clearly mentioned if you take literally. So then, some disciple get confused. In the first turning wheel of the Dharma, it seems to indicate that is inherent existing, and the second turning wheel of the Dharma, such as Hasutra, they seem to be refuting that, and it seems to indicate that nothing inherent exists. Some disciple got confused, and then they ask, and then in some of the third turning wheel of the Dharma, then Buddha give explanation why he said that in the first turning wheel of Dharma and second turning of the wheel of Dharma, and what is his final kind of thoughts, and so in terms of the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, the first two school of thoughts of Buddhism, Bhavasika, Sotantrika, they take that as more literally, and they don't take the second turning wheel of literally. Whereas Nagarjuna and those middle way school, they take the second turning wheel of Dharma as a definitive and as a literally, and not the first one. Yeah, it is called Bodhichitta, it's called clarifying the meaning of the sutras. And then in the third turning of the wheel, then, and the Siddha Mother, the mind holy school, then take the third turning of the wheel of Dharma as literally and definitely. So that is, so four schools of thought, and within those three schools, which sutra they take as definitive and literally is a different. That is why. So they each have their different sources from where their beliefs come from. So because that question is that question brought up, so that is why Nagarjuna now giving answer to that. The Buddhas, thus the Buddhas who seek to help others, have taught to the disciple first turning wheel of the Dharma, okay, the five aggregates, which are form aggregate, feeling aggregate, perception aggregate, volitional force aggregate, and consciousness aggregate. So in that, Buddha explained those five aggregates as though it exists, almost as though it exists inherently, truly existence, And why did that? If that is not Buddha's final thoughts, why did he thought that? And so here is to help and benefit the sentient beings, because the disciple of that sutras were not ready and ripened to hear the teaching on selflessness of inherent existence. For them, because they are not ready, if Buddha said things do not exist inherently or truly existing, they will fall to the nihilism. For them, they cannot digest or they cannot understand how things can exist if they do not exist inherently or truly existence. So for that, because they are not ready for this time, at this time they are not ready to hear the final teachings. So then Buddha taught them that, and with that then Buddha taught the gross level of selflessness, but not the subtle level of the selflessness. Okay? So when we talk about selflessness, there can be many different levels of selflessness. Just as in grasping, there can be many different levels of grasping of the self. Gross level, subtle level, and more subtle level of grasping, ignorance. In the same way, and then Buddha taught, how self do not exist. He didn't explain the self do not exist inherently because they were not ready to hear that. Their mind was not ready and their mind was not ripened for that. So Buddha explained, how self do not exist, but it does not exist as before, it's not permanent, it is not single, it is not autonomous, as well as that the self that do not have, there's no self that is like the pilot who fly the plane, or driver who drives, there is a car or the airplane, and then there is the pilot or driver who drive that, as though there is totally kind of, where they are dependent but in a different ways, as though one is the master of the others. But Buddha explained there's no such self that is master of your aggregate. There's no self who is the master of aggregates that is separate from that self aggregate. If you really analyze and check, you cannot find the self apart from the aggregate. Outside of aggregate, that is like the pilot, that is like the masters. And so therefore, there's no such self, such autonomous self. And so Buddha explained, presented the selflessness, but not the final and more subtle selflessness, but more gross level selflessness. So that is that. And then in next verse number 12, the excellent among the bipeds, the Buddha, who is the excellent among the human god, always taught as well, form appear as mass of forms. So among the five aggregates, the form appear as a mass of form. Feeling aggregates resemble bubbles in the water, and the perceptions aggregate like a mirage. And verse number 13, mental formation aggregation like the plant and trees, and the consciousness aggregated is like a magical illusions. Presenting the aggregates in this manner, the Buddha taught thus to the Bodhisattvas. So then, in the second turning wheel of the Dharma, as you say at the Heart Sutra at the very beginning, the audience is the community of Bodhisattvas and that, monks and lay practitioners of Bodhisattvas. So to them, the Buddha taught because they were ready and they were ripened and they were ready to hear the more subtle emptiness or selflessness. And in that, then Buddha explained how five aggregates are empty of inherent nature. How all five aggregates, not only the self, but even the aggregates, the five aggregates, all of them are empty of inherent nature, empty of truly existence. And that is the Buddha's final thoughts. And so here, of course, he gives different examples of that, with each of, and each of those examples represent that things do not exist the way it appears. Okay, each of those examples are different example of how things appear one way and how things exist differently. In the same way, those five aggregates, even though they appear to our mind as truly inherent existence, but in reality, none of them exist truly in inherent existence. They all are empty of truly existing inherent existence. Therefore, they all are like a mirage. They all are like the illusions. They all are like the plant and tree. They all are like the bubbles of water. They all are like the mass of the forms. So again, you can go with each aggregate, each example, or all these phenomena as example, all of them. Okay. So, for example, when we see the mass of foam in the water, when there is water dripping or in the water, when you see the mass of foam from outside, it seems like it is very, what do you call, inside is full. When there's foam of that bubbles inside, it almost look like there's full, but there's inside is empty. The way it appears and the way it is different, even though it feels like there is full, but actually it's empty, and even though it looks like a stable, but it's very fragile, it's very fragile, very fragile. Even though when you look from distance, it might feel like, it might look like, it might appear like it's not so fragile, but if you try to touch it, whether it's the water bubbles or mass of foam, both of them are like that, very fragile, and it do not exist the way it appear. Similarly, that is, the form aggregate, the feeling, they're same, they all are very fragile, ever-changing, impermanent, and do not exist the way it appears to the ordinary mind or our ordinary mind. It does not exist truly inherent exist the way it appears to our mind. you know. Same with, mirage, in mirage, in certain distance with certain light, you might see there's water there in certain places with certain conditions, but there is no real water. It's just a deception. Even from the distance, it might look like there is a water there, but if you go there closer, there's no water. It's due to the lightning, is due to certain material on that sand or area, and so so if you go closer, there is no real water. It's just a deception. Even though it appears water, but then there's no real water in reality. Same, even that there's appearance of truly inherent existence. If you really analyze, analyze deeply, then you cannot find truly inherent existence in perception or any of the phenomena. In the same way, mental formations, planting trees is something, that produce, it explains, there seems to be different commentary what that really tree is, some say it's banana tree, some say it's not different. But basically, the idea that this example, Buddha planted tree, is an example of tree that produce the fruit or result one time, and then everything kind of, including the branch, including the trunk, everything then dry up, and it doesn't produce anymore. That it dry up. And some says it is the banana because the trunks, once it produces the banana from that trunk, it will never produce another banana from next year. It will another trunk will provide, but not the same. So, but that is not. So whatever the main thing is, from outside, it looks like any other plant tree that it is going to, again, what you call very strong, and that would produce the fruit or result all the time, but it is not. Sometimes it is also giving example of essenceless as well. And here again, the way it appears and the way it exists do not match. And same with illusions, magical illusions, magical illusions is, magicians through his or her trick, different, whatever different trick that he or he use, then he creates some kind of illusions, you see things. But there's no real things that the way, in reality, the way it appears to our mind, because it is just a trick. And so the things that appear to our mind and the way reality is not same. It is just an illusion. It is just a trick. Same way, even though everything's appear, our consciousness and everything's appear to exist from its own side, truly inherently, but it is just a illusion. It's just a, deception. That is because of, due to the magicians created by our past imprint of the ignorance and the delusion, especially the ignorance. Due to that ignorance, then, imprint of the ignorance, then there's that appearance. But if you analyze deeply, then there's not any trace or atom of truly or inherently existing there. So it's like a magician illusion, So therefore, that is so then next is explaining about the. So then it's going a little bit on the five aggregates, explain a little bit of five aggregates. After he explained those five aggregates, explaining those five aggregates are empty of truly inherent existence. And then what are those five aggregates? Then that which is characterized by the four great elements is clearly thought to be aggregate of form. So aggregate of form, the physical aggregate or the form aggregate, is made out of or characteristics or collections of the four elements. The water element, the fire element, earth element, and wind element, air or wind element. When we say four, sometimes in Buddhist scripture you find four elements, sometimes you find five elements, sometimes you find six elements, and of course sometimes you find 18 elements. Okay, so this is four elements, and sometimes when they say five on top of this four, then space element, if you could. And then when it says six on top of those five, then consciousness element, then it becomes six. So, but here four elements. So if we see our physical body or the form, it is made from those four elements. And of course, then within the four elements, there are different, the four elements that we see, even with what you call microscope, these are still gross. These are still gross. These are still very gross, gross level of elements. And so if you go down, in some of the scriptures, the way those four elements explain is almost like energy. It's like you cannot see with your eyes, even with the microscope. It's more of the energies, more of potentials. Each of so from out of that energy potential, then it produces kind of a little bit more gross level of elements. And then from that, it coming together, many of those elements become more gross and more gross until we can see with our naked eye, But if you go more subtle and subtle level, then the so-called element is very just a potential or energy, the more subtle level, subtle level. And sometimes, as I said, like when you talk about five elements as space elements, and sometimes it is called the space element is pervade all other elements, all other four elements. And it is again, I haven't read commentary myself, okay? But His Holiness very often, in many different teachings, he often said, because of course His Holiness has read many times, study Kalachakra deeply, and in Kalachakra it talks about, end of one, the Eon, the end of the one world, and before the creation new world, between that, then there is so-called space atoms. And then when the new world starts, it starts from that space particles or elements. And so that space particles or element is very, very subtle. It's just like the energy, some kind of energy, and very potentials, and that become, yeah. And then from there, then wind energies, fire energies, water energies, and then not in the energy or the elements, and then earth element, And so that is how new world is created in term of external world, So that is what it is saying. So that is the aggregate of the form. Okay. So if we say what is the aggregate of the form made out of, so it is made out of those four elements. Made out of those four elements. It's coming together with those four elements. It's characterized by those four elements, and within the four elements, then again, grows to subtle level of that. The rest are invariably established, therefore, as devoid of material form. The rest are those rest of the four aggregates: the feeling aggregate, the perception aggregate, mental formation aggregate, and consciousness aggregate. Those four are devoid of material form. They don't have any material. They are not material. Okay, they are formless. They are formless. They are non-material. They are just awareness, just feelings, awareness, and luminous, clarity, luminous. So. And without those four aggregates, then there can't be five aggregates. There can't be five aggregates. So again, so those are the five aggregates. Okay, maybe let's not go to it. So then going to the more form aggregates, So now it is describing the more of the 18 elements and 12, here translated sense field. Sometime, sense faculties, So through this, the eyes, visual form, and so forth, which are described as elements, so eye elements or eye sense faculty, or eye element, and the object of that eye element is the form, physical form, that is shape, color, whatever. And then consciousness, eye consciousness, that perceive the shape or color, the form through that eye faculties. Okay, so there's three. Do you get it? And then same with nose, ear faculty, nose faculties, mouth faculties, body faculties, elements, and then mental elements. And then object of each of those, the object of ear elements is the sound. And the ear consciousness that perceives the sound through that ear element of faculties. The same with the nose, the nose faculties of elements, and the object of that is the smell, and the nose consciousness, receiving the smell through that nose faculties, and same with the body, there's the body faculties, and the object of that is, something rough, something smooth, something warm, something cold, and then body consciousness that perceives that warmness, that coldness, or that roughness or that smoothness through that body faculty of elements. And then mental consciousness, mental elements, and the object of mental element is, all other mental objects. And then, the mental consciousness that perceives those mental objects through that mental element. So with that, then that it becomes 18. Do you get it? Six faculties and 6 consciousness and 6 objects of that faculty. So totally it becomes 18. So that you see in many of the Buddhist writing, 18 elements. Okay? And so when they describe 18 elements, that is what they are referring to. It is same in Heart Sutra. There is also that in the Heart Sutra too, And so that is describing that. And then where this should be known also as the 12 sense faculty. And when we kind of, from 18 element to, if we kind of make it more contents or contents more, then it can be contents in a 12 sense faculties or sense field, or sense sphere, and those are the, those 6 faculty and 6 objects of those 6 faculties, And so yeah, the eye sense faculties or a field, the ear, nose, tongue, body, and mental sense faculty, mental consciousness or field, sense faculty of field, and then 6 objects of them, and that 12. And when you kind of contains all of those, whether it's 18 elements, whether it's 12 sense faculties, if you contents, then they can be all contents within the as object and subject as well. Then you can contain all that within this subject and objects. All mental world, okay? Mental world are included in the subjects, and all non-mental world are included in the objects. Do you get it? Are we? Yeah, so when we just explain subject and object, the world of the mind, different mind and mental factors, different mental factors, all kind of different consciousness, they all are included within the subjects. And then all others objects which are not mental world, the physical world, okay, the physical world, the physical matters, as well as those things who are neither physical or neither mind, such as the persons. So-called the person is not the mind, neither is the physical. It is a conditioned phenomena which neither of them. All others, permanent objects, they all come within the category of objects. So you can condense within this category of subject and object as well. So that is what. So when you analyze, okay, neither this is in verse number 16. neither the atom or the form exists, nor is the sense organ elsewhere. Even more, no sense organs as agents exist. So here, because as I said, because the two school of thoughts of the Buddhists, the Sotandrika and Babasika, they believe, there's partless. On ultimate level, there's partless matter, particles, and partless consciousness. Okay, everything starts from there. Okay, so that is what their belief. All the material, physical matter of particles starts from that partless. On most smaller level, there is a partless, and coming many together of that partless, then become more gross and more gross and gross, coming together more and more of that, and then we are able to see it. But so therefore, all these material are made of that, and same with consciousness. Consciousness is made from that partless consciousness, and moment of many partless consciousness, then make the moment of consciousness, and then it become more gross in that way. So that is what the and therefore, therefore they believe there is those objects, because they are produced by something out there from that partless. Therefore, they exist from its own side of truly existence. Okay, they exist truly and in existence, especially the partless, which is the very basis of everything. So they believe that is the ultimate, and that is the ultimate, truly existence, infinite existence. Okay, and that ideas or concept is being refuted and negated by the mind-only school, as well as the middle way school. Nagarjuna, they both negate such idea of partless, particle and partless consciousness. Okay, so therefore, if you try to analyze, atom, the particles, the material world, the matter world, the atoms, if you analyze, where does it come from, how it is being created, if you go and find, then, you cannot find, because the very basis of that do not exist, because there's no partless atom that created all the other atoms. There's no partless consciousness that created the consciousness. There's no partless particle or form that created the eye faculties, sense faculties. So therefore, there is neither the atom or form exists, nor is the sense organ elsewhere. If you analyze, then it cannot. There cannot be, atom of the form, as you said, to those schools. Neither there is a sense organ, you said. Why? Because you said they were created or produced by that partless, but there is no partless of that. So if there's no partless particle, how can that partless particle makes this atom of form that you can see? If there's no partless consciousness, how can you say this partless consciousness coming together, or moment of meaning of that, create that consciousness? So therefore that, and of course the reason they will go later, how they refute it, Even more so, sense organ, and if there's no particle or particles, partless, not particle, partless particle and partless consciousness, and so then there can't be a sense organ that is made from that partless atoms. And if there is no sense organ, then there is no sense organ agent that perceive the form, for example, in the eye sense faculties, because the way it is, there is the objects and there is the subject, the agent, that is the faculty that perceive that object, And so then you cannot also proceed that, there is that sense organ exists as agents, So the produce and produce are utterly unsuited for production. So what is being producer is that partless particle and consciousness. What is being produced is the gross particles and gross consciousness. And so, that partless cannot produce that gross particle, and that partless consciousness cannot produce the gross mind or consciousness. It is unsuitable, is not possible, because there's no partless to start with. Okay, so that is. In verse number 17, the atom, the form, do not produce sense perceptions, for they transcend the realm of the senses. So again, when they explain, those school of thought, when they talk about the functioning of the consciousness, functionings of the sense faculties in relation to the objects, so then they explain, first there's the objects, whatever object, let's say, in terms of form, shape and color, there's shape and color, and due to that shape and color, and due to the eye sense faculty, come in contact, that produce eye sense perceptions. Do you get it? Eye sense perception that perceive the shape and color. There is the shape and color objectively there. And there is the sense organs. And then with that sense organ and the objects coming together, produce the eye sense perception of consciousness that perceive the shape and color. That is, and so here Nagarjuna or Asanga, even the minor holy school, then they refute. You cannot describe that way. It's not possible, because the atom, the form, cannot produce such sense perceptions. Why? Because there is no such atom or form as you describe. Because you describe that atom or form is created from that partless particle. But since there's not partless particles, how can there be a form that has been produced by that partless form particles? And if there's no partless particles, then there's no way that partless particle can create a form, gross form, and that can act as a cause for that perception. So therefore, then atom form do not produce sense perception. And for they transcend the realm of sense, And when you talk about the atoms, as mentioned, there are many different level of atoms, gross to subtle, more subtle, and the most subtle atom is, transcended beyond the senses, in some of the others, in some of the writings, some of Buddhist writings, they describe about the atom of mental consciousness, and that atom, the atom of the mental consciousness is described very subtle, that cannot be perceived by the sense, sense organs, by the sense perception, and therefore that transits the realm of the sense. If asserted that they are produced through aggregation, production through collection too is not accepted. So, there is no such partless atom that has been refuted. But if you say there is a form of atoms that is being produced through aggregations or through coming together of many of those partless, through the collections, by coming together, all of that, also that is not possible, is not accepted, cannot be possible, because to start with, the very basis for all that, you are talking about describing something to start with that do not exist. And then you are talking about something that do not exist, and you are talking about coming in production by coming together many of those which do not exist, which is the particles and so forth. So that is. So then 18 is the 18, verse number 18 is the reasoning mind holy school use to refute the idea of the partless. Okay, up to here they said there is no partless, but they didn't really use the reasoning. So the reasoning is explained here, why they refute the idea of partless, how it cannot be a partless. So here, that's the reasoning there. This is the logic or reasoning for them to say there is no partless particle and partless consciousness. Through division is term of spatial dimensions, even the atom is seen as possessing part. So, and that which is analyzed in terms of part, how can it logically be an indivisible atom? So here, when you say partless, then it is something indivisible. You cannot divide anymore. Okay, so that is what they say, and that is the basis for everything. That partless, the partless particle is basis for all the physical matter, and the partless consciousness is the basis for all the consciousness. Okay, it all starts from that. And that is why they say that is absolute, because everything starts from there. That is the basis for everything. And so here, Asanga and Nagarjuna and all, reason that so-called the partless, even though it might be so small, you cannot break into two more. Okay, it goes so small, that particles. Now you cannot divide into two pieces anymore. It's too small to divide into pieces. Do you get it? Are we clear? It is so small that you cannot break into two pieces anymore. Okay? That is why they say a device cannot be, it is a partless or indivisible, because it cannot break into two more anymore. Too small to break into. There is nothing to break into two more. So even there is such particle that you cannot break into two, okay? But still, that particle, more subtle particle that you described, cannot be break into two parts. Still, does it has a dimensional, directional part or not? Okay, the south side of that particle, north side, east side, west side, up side or downside. So that is the logic. Is there those or not? That is the ask question. Okay, if there is no side of that particles, east and west, south and north, up and down. So then, on top of that, when you add one particle, it will sink into that. Just like a can, if there is hole, you put water, it goes down. No matter how much you put water, it never full. It never fill. Do you get it? It never gets filled because there's hole, the water keep on going down. It never can get filled. In the same way, if it is partless, then no matter how many of those partless particles come on over all, it cannot become a bigger and bigger and grows and grows. It will just like water being poured and sink, and it can never become a gross. The reason why from that partless, or that not, they don't use partless, but that's more small particles where you cannot break into two more. But still, when many of them come together, because the one that come from the east side doesn't touch the west side. The one from the west side doesn't touch the east side. The one from the north side doesn't touch the south side. The south side doesn't touch the north side. The upper one doesn't touch the lower and lower. And so when it comes, then it becomes many of those coming together bigger and bigger. And then that is how it's created. So from that, when you use that kind of reasoning and logic, it's clear there is side. East side, north side of that particle. South side, north side, east side, west, upside, long that side. And therefore, you cannot say it's indivisible, partless. It is still part. You can say it's partly in the sense of that you cannot break into break into more pieces, but still there is a part of those east part, north part, south part, west part, east, west part, north side, up part, and down part. If there is no part, then there will not be possible for many of those coming together to create more growth, where then we are able to become from that more growth and growth. Do you get the reasoning, logic? Does it make sense? So that is the reasoning they use. Okay, that is the logic they use. So to refute that there is, therefore, even that one has a part. Therefore, even that one is not partless. Okay, and therefore, since it has part, is not partless. Okay, and so therefore it cannot exist inherently by itself because it depends on these parts to exist. Without those parts, even that more subtle particle or consciousness cannot exist as that particle or as that consciousness by itself. It can only exist as that more subtle particle or consciousness by depending on different parts that make that. So that is how it is refuted. And so therefore, since there is no partless particle, therefore there cannot be a a matter or particle or atom that is made from that partless particles. And therefore, if there is no of that object, therefore then there is no, you cannot say there is a perceptions that perceive that objects, because there's no such objects. So therefore there cannot be consciousness that perceive that. And therefore there is also no sense faculty that perceive that. Therefore there's also no sense agency or agency of the consciousness itself. So that is how it refute that. So through that refuting, so then mind holy school refute this idea of external objects such as matter or particle existing from its own side by itself, with such reasoning logic. So it's refuted that. So on top, so therefore here, it presents the self-lesson of phenomena. In the first two school of thought, they present the selfless person, but in their what do you call in their presentation, they don't have the selfless of phenomena. Okay, only selfless of persons. They don't explain the selfless of phenomena. They only explain phenomena. So then, when it comes to the mind holy school, not only there is selfless of persons, as described before, but also there's a certain phenomena, such as the aggregates. Even the aggregates are empty of existence from its own side. Especially here they are talking about the physical aggregates, the atoms, the physical matter, the atoms. Empty of existence from objectively from its own side, and they will come later how these all are projections of your mind. It's all projection of your mind. Nothing exists objectively from its own side. Whatever shape, whatever color, whatever different size that we might experience, or that it might appear to us, whatever we experience, there's none of that existing from its own side. It's purely projection of our mind. So everything is projection of our mind. There's nothing that exists physically from its own side. All the physical matter, all the physical world. So yeah. So I think that is. So today maybe we'll stop here. Verse number 18. Okay. Any questions? Any questions, comments? Of course, if you don't have, we don't have to. But yes, please. Okay, I see two. Yeah. Maybe 1 minute. Would you like to?
So regarding the emptiness of the five aggregates, I think for me, form is easiest to understand emptiness. The other ones, I think, is it correct to understand it in the same way almost as the form? Because in the end, everything, material is made up of these particles, made up of particles, made up of particles, and is empty. And so our consciousness also depends on those. But I was wondering if there's a separate kind of analysis that breaks down the different aggregates in terms of their particles.
Thank you. I think that is same with all other school of thoughts, or many school of thoughts have the same I guess same doubt or difficulty, just like as you said, you know, minority schools refute the physical matters or things or form, atom existing truly or exist from its own side, but when you come to the mind, they have difficulty. Therefore, in their mind, the mind is truly existing, inherent existence. And that is the difference. And then Nagarjuna, the middle way school, refute not only the external phenomena, even the internal phenomena, even the mind is empty of truly inherent, equally. But even the mind only schools, they have difficulty of that, and also many of the school of thoughts within the Buddhist school of thought, that is where they think the physical aggregate doesn't continue, after the death. But the mental consciousness continue, and therefore they think because the set continues, therefore what really continues the consciousness. Therefore they find the self within the consciousness, within the different consciousness. That's how they. Maybe it will come later, okay? But just to for the ideas, even consciousness, okay, is made of many moments. If you take each of the moment, each of those moments is not that consciousness. The mind, let's say my eye consciousness perceiving the cup. The eye consciousness that perceives my cup is made of many moments of consciousness that is able to perceive this cup. And so it is made of many parts of that, moments of that. And each of those moments cannot perceive this cup. Only through coming together, all these many moments is able to perceive that. So if you try to find where is that mind that perceives this, eye consciousness that perceives this cup, if you try to find within each of those moments, you cannot find within each of those moments. Because each of those moments does not have the functioning to be able to perceive that. It's only through all many moments that is able to do. Therefore, so you can use that with consciousness. That is same with feelings, whatever feeling we pleasant, unpleasant, neutral feeling, whatever we are feeling, is made of many moments. If I'm feeling unpleasant, it's made of many moments that make you feel unpleasant or pleasant. But each of those moments that make that is not unpleasant feeling or the pleasant feeling itself. Each of these moments, okay, and that is the same with the discriminating mental factors. When I discriminate, this is cup, or this is nice cup, whatever. Again, it's made of many moments that is able to distinguish or discriminate this as a cup. But each of those moments is neither of them, because each of those moments it doesn't have the functioning of this, It's only coming together, all many moments of that together. It has certain functioning characteristic ability to do that. And that will be the same with the compositional factor of consciousness, and that will be the same with the consciousness, whether it's sense consciousness, whether it's mental consciousness. It's just like physical world is made of many moments. Each one moment of consciousness, whatever that consciousness, is made of many, many moments. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And for me, one thing I shared, and because it was helpful for me, one time I was doing some recording. I had to go to the studio recording because I have to record something for the fundraising for the school there. And because I've never been there, and that is where I noticed in the recording studio, where if you say, one word ah, or even just sound ah, it is made of so many moments that make that ah sound, And each of those, if you break into each of them, are not that sound. And same with the consciousness, just like I don't know how many hundreds and thousands they can break into, it could be I don't know how many moments, but you can see, and just like that, so many of those moments made that consciousness, but each of those moments are not of them. You cannot find within each of those moments. Neither you find outside of each of those moments. Yeah. Yes. So,
Just a quick aside, speaking of the recording studio, the most complex waveform actually is a gong. A gong. So I have 3 questions, but the third is on consciousness. I'll save it for the future. The scientific experimental method demonstrates repeatability. So if things are illusory, how is that possible?
we have to understand the term when we use like those examples, like illusory illusions, like a dream state. It's not saying awake state, dream state. Okay, it is like a dream state. Everything's like a dream state. Everything's like illusions. It's not saying, there's no difference between someone cup here and then someone with magic creating an illusion of cup. There's a difference between this cup and magician creating an illusion of cup. Maybe even though it's not cup, he drew some trick, something, it appeared to my mind just like cup. But that might not have same functioning of this cup that I can use to drink. It is just a trick or whatever illusion he created or she created. So therefore, the example using like everything is like a illusions or like a dream state. If you see, it is like a dream, like an illusion. The example, what is giving just an illusion, the way thing appear and the way thing is not same. There's different appearance and the reality is different. Same in the dream. And so that is to give an example how everything's in our life, ordinary, the way things appear and the way things exist is different. The things appear to exist inherently, truly exist in our mind, but in the reality, things do not exist inherently or truly exist, and therefore it's like a dream, therefore like a so. Yeah, and he's a physician, so maybe you can discuss with her. Okay, maybe she can you to her lab.
It's not framed that clearly, but I have this uncomfortable disjunct between the physical sense, for example, of a hug or a kiss, and the argument that it is a projection. I mean, there's a transfer of energy between two people when either of those occur, for example. So I'm confused. Where's that energy coming from?
I don't know. No, that energy comes from that energies come from perceptions, mind, because people cannot have same feelings depending on their perceptions, their mind state. Two people hug and they might not have same feelings. It can have a totally opposite feeling for two people, depending on what their relationship is, depending on what the perception of the other person is, depending on what they feel. For one person, it might be joyful in certain cases. In certain cases, it can be aversions, dislike, anger. Yeah, of course, it is, whether it's a physical, whether it's energy, whether it's a mental things, none of them exist by themselves, inherently. If you try to find them, again, it is the same thing. You cannot find where that energy is. Is it in your mouth? Is it in your body? Is it in outside of body? Is it in that? You cannot find it because there's nothing wrong with experiencing that. And the Nagarjuna or Buddhism is not negating about that. It's all about engaging in any actions with that belief that there is inherent existence of that, or with understanding there's no inherent existence of that. It's all come to that. It doesn't mean that I cannot drink a tea, I cannot enjoy tea, Yes. So let's not go because, yeah. Okay. I don't know whether, yeah, it might be too, okay.
How would I say it? You're the inherent. Okay, so it has no inherent existence. In one sense, you could say, well, you're making it all up. It's a fabrication of the mind. But in another sense, you don't exist, and the person you're hugging doesn't exist either. And if you see that, then there's an incredible energy. There's a ton of energy. But it's different from this world of things that you believe, permanently exist, including you and the other person.
I think definitely, Mark did make a point there, the experience is different when you have that grasping of something inherently existing within this object, and then someone able to experience that object without the grasping of inherently existing. There is a different experiences. And yeah, okay. Anyway, let's do the dedication.
Gewadi Nujuda Lama Sangye Dukyune Rowa Chikya Maluka Dehi Sala Go Parsho Jonsho Samcho Rinpoche Ma Ke Panam Ke Gyuchi Ke Wadam Pa Me Payam Gong Ne Gong Du Pel Marsho. The wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel for His Holiness. Thank you, Michael. Sorry about that. Long life prayer for His Holiness. Thank you. The wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.